Woof. And welcome to Muttday Morning News. I'm the titular Mutt Fen, so let's get to some news. I've got a lot for you this week. Comic drama, video game shenanigans, more weirdness with Itch, a story about anime figures, Disney adults, Fleetwood Mac, a dinosaur, and even some investigative reporting as my final story for the morning. I also don't get a chance to do a lot of follow-up stories so far, so let's fix that. Gretchen Felker-Martin, the trans woman banned by leftist BlueSky, every time a Nazi starts talking about trans pogroms, was finally unbanned with her first post back at 2:10 p.m. MDT on September 17th. I wrote that down because I happened to see it, right when it happened. A mere 2 days before another BlueSky announcement we'll get to later. While BlueSky took a week to unban her, DC knuckled down on pulling her Red Hood run, going so far as to recall the first issue and refunding stores who'd bought it. P.S. If anyone has a spare physical copy, I'd like one. While Ms. Felker-Martin's comics were pulled, DC still sells the works of chaser and credibly alleged rapist and abuser Neil Gaiman. Eddie Berganza, whose work is also still carried by DC, had a unique DC policy built around him to keep women staffers from interacting with him as he kept sexually harassing and assaulting them. And let's also not forget Warren Ellis, who more than 100 women have accused of using his position of power and prestige in the comic industry to coerce them for sex, including minors, while emotionally abusing them for at least as far back as 2009. Meanwhile, Gretchen Felker-Martin merely told a dead Nazi who regularly called for her and my extermination and argued deaths by gun violence, such as his own, are a required aspect of the Second Amendment we all just have to live with, so those killed should feel thoughts and prayers, you Nazi bitch. And followed that up with the heartfelt wish, hope the bullet's okay after touching Charlie Kirk. Fun fact, that second one ended up in Sinclair's 1-hour Kirk memorial. The memorial, announced to play during what should have been Jimmy Kimmel Live on Friday the 19th, was nowhere to be seen during that time slot. Instead replaced by yet another episode of Celebrity Family Feud, what Sinclair had been using to fill the time slot in general. Much to the confusion of those who tuned in to support the fascist and those who wanted to see what advertiser Sinclair was going to tie to the Nazi without telling them. Sinclair announced the change 6 minutes before the would-be airing on the Nazi-owned Twitter, claiming the change, posting the memorial exclusively to YouTube, made it more widely accessible, despite previously stating plans to do that anyway as well. Back here in reality, it seems to have actually been an attempt to preempt those advertiser alerts, as well as to hide that the 55-minute long piece contains less than 2 minutes of Charlie Kirk's actual words and actions, and even those are mostly just his least vitriolic hate speech. Mostly. Because let me show you the funny 45 seconds or so. Oh, by the way, if you need a laugh, go check out the actual video on YouTube. The comments are hilarious. There are more comments than likes, and if you go to one of the services that lets you still see dislikes, it's more than 70%. Anyway, let's see that video.
Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
So I would argue that what you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's a little bit of a one-liner.
How about the successes of free market capitalism? The fact that we have abundance in light, air conditioning. The fact that we have more food that we throw away every single year than we actually eat. The fact that in the Western world...
Think that's a good thing? You think that our waste is a good thing, dude?
We have an abundance problem in the West.
I just want to thank both of you for having a constructive and lively debate. Give both of them a big round of applause.
God bless America.
If you're curious what the rest of the video was, it was pretty much that last little second there, just like 3 newscasters going over news stories. In fact, it looks to have been cut together almost exclusively from syndicated Sinclair news broadcasts very badly. On a related story, after ABC fired Kimmel for his most paltry comments on Kirk, reportedly due to pressure from parent company Disney CEO Bob Iger and 2 of their large local syndication networks, Sinclair and Nexstar, both of whom are looking to court federal favor as they pursue mergers with other networks, despite already controlling 1/4 of the nation's local news between them. Disney stock has taken a major blow. While it's been reported that the hit was nearly $4 billion in 3 days, as of the time of writing on Sunday the 21st, Disney had actually lost closer to $8 billion in value, but appeared to rally a bit during aftermarket trading. I have not checked yet for the Monday price yet. The drop has many possible sources. The extremely public and foolish First Amendment violations by the Trump administration calling for the cancellation, Disney's fascist appeasement, or it could have been former Disney CEO credited with the Disney Renaissance, Michael Eisner, taking to Twitter to lambast Iger's cowardice, or the public comments made by Star Wars actor and perpetual trans and Palestinian ally Pedro Pascal, or Marvel actor and perpetual trans and Palestinian ally Bruce Banner, aka Mark Ruffalo, or the fairly pathetic comments made by Obama and even the wannabe Republican Chuck Schumer. Or maybe it's that Disney adults have proven to have more of a spine than every Harry Potter fan on the planet. The Disney Plus and Hulu websites have been up and down since Thursday as users close their accounts, with some planning on abandoning the brand as much as possible, while others plan to sail the high seas once again. All while both streaming services began offering 70% discounts. The real pressure, though, seems to have been from Disney adult influencers, calling for a more complete boycott. See, it's sort of an open secret that while Disney's media empire is vast and all-encompassing, it's not their primary profit spinner. That would be the parks and cruises. Both have taken big hits since even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and have effectively transitioned to the Spirit Airlines business model, where the already rather inflated ticket price gets you in the gate, but most experiences once inside are behind another paywall or a massive time investment which can be skipped for an extra cost. With the illegal ICE kidnappings, especially in Florida, international visitors have nearly vanished from the parks in the last 9 months, and major Disney influencers calling for an abandonment of the parks, even while flanked by mouse ears, seems to have investors scared they're going to lose domestic visitors too. And let's not forget about the Writers Guild of America's protesting outside the ABC studios in Burbank, California, as well as Kimmel's studio in New York. I have a thing in my script here that's just freeform ramble about the Dark Prince, which, hang on. Here? Where did I put that thing? Oh no! I forgot it's over on the Entertainment Center. My father was a writer for the LA Times, among many other places, and one of his proudest moments was that Bill Justice, the creator of Chippendale and at least one other character I'm forgetting, drew this for him based on the reporting that he did on Disney's horrible labor practices, which is part of why I always try to keep it around whenever I'm writing, especially the news. So, my father was a horrible person, or horrible father, but legitimately decent reporter on things. So yeah, I keep this around for mostly that reason. If you can't see, this is literally Goofy and Donald burning a thing of the Dark Prince, which I believe was the name of the story that my father wrote about their wildly bullshit labor practices, which mostly amounted to just, fucking everyone in terms of money, but hey. Post-show bit, so I just wanted to have it as its own little thing, but we'll see. Let's get back to that other BlueSky story. On September 19th, the BlueSky account, the BlueSky account skeeted their new community guidelines, proclaiming, "Thank you to the 14,000 plus people who shared feedback on our community guidelines. We're updating our rules for clarity, strengthening enforcement, and introducing product changes for healthier conversations. New guidelines kick in October 15th. The guidelines were actually more vague than the previous iteration, and now ban even wider swaths of fictional work, as well as disallowing discussion of self-harm, suicide, or substance use outside of an educational or positive setting. It's blatant censorship, and the new guidelines make it clear in the opening paragraphs the owners both resent they've been cast as the lefty alternative to Twitter, and their intent to use the new rules to quash the hashtag Save Speech movement, and like Tumblr before it, the platform's thriving indie NSFW art scene. BlueSky having apparently forgotten how that resulted in Tumblr losing 99.7% of its value. For those who weren't around at the time, Tumblr was purchased by Yahoo in 2013 for $1.1 billion US. Yahoo was acquired by Verizon in 2017, who eventually enacted the porn ban of 2018 before selling the site to Automatic, the folks what run WordPress and are now trying to shove Gen AI and advertising and gambling into the site, for less than $3 million in 2019. Again, that is a 99.7% value loss in only 6 years. I've linked a thread by Void. This is from the beginning of Void's thread, one of the folks organizing the hashtag Save Speech movement, in the description with fact-checking of what was changed in the guidelines, what you can do to oppose them, and tools to help you do so. Since then, the dev team has begun blocking users and even actively hiding the comments of those critical of the changes. I would also recommend, if you use BlueSky, consider leaving a negative review on the App Store, especially if you're on the iPhone App Store. The Android rating has already dropped to about 3.4 at time of recording, however, the Apple rating has not yet. And since I'm talking about the hashtag Save Speech movement, 1, remember to do your dailies. Go to stoppaypros.neocities.org to learn how to fight back against card networks, banks, and payment processors telling you what you can and cannot buy with your money. 2, there's more of this crap going on. Ana Valens first reported on a tip via BlueSky user Ciceri Moe Observer that the subreddit r/anime figures had noticed 18-plus figures were suddenly missing from HobbyLink Japan on Tuesday. After users asked the store what was going on, they were told, "Due to recent changes in our operations, we have made the decision to remove all adult-oriented items from our website." You figure out what on earth makes a figure adult-oriented versus not, because I honestly don't know. There's been confirmation that existing pre-orders will still be fulfilled, but that a large section of the store is simply gone and will likely never return. Ms. Valens was also the first to catch that on the same day, HoloLive discontinued PayPal use on their shop, implying potentially that both HoloLive and HobbyLink Japan situations may have stemmed from the same root. Only 2 weeks after, Dark Chibi Shadow, purveyor of fine trans-inclusive comic smut, wrote a long blog post about their attempt to actually work with the so-called higher-risk payment processors adult creators are recommended to connect with. I've also linked that below, and it's a harrowing read, with half of them effectively refusing to process payments for things even PayPal and Stripe are fine with, while the others had ridiculous data demands with no promises of protection, all while still claiming a larger percentage of every transaction. One adult payment processor even told DCS they wouldn't process payments for goods that were illegal in the US or forbidden by Visa and MasterCard, including adult works with blood, degradation just as a concept, or fantasy, e.g. cat ears, fairies, etc. And since none of those are illegal, you know what that means. Yellat.money is another place you can go to find out how to fight back against paypros. And let's not pretend that everything's rosy for Itch, who kinda started a lot of us being aware of this crap. 2 weeks ago, I reported on the Itch payout delays and their support thread. At the time, it had 156 posts. As of Sunday, the 21st, it's up to 229, with some authors who'd had previous payouts only a little delayed, now reporting 30-plus day payout waits, with some reporting a 63 and counting wait. And yes, before you ask, the Vintage Story devs did get most of their payouts in early September, though, reportedly, they may still have another one waiting, covering the period between their third payout request and when they delisted Vintage Story from the Itch store, as, for some reason, Itch's payment system only lets you have 3 pending payouts, even if they've been waiting for months. You may have also heard something about Fleetwood Mac getting together for a reunion for the birthday of a certain Scottish billionaire famous for transphobia, Holocaust denial, and, more recently, quoting Hitler twice from memory in the last week. The source was a wildly speculative article out of the Daily Mail, a British right-wing tabloid I don't know why anyone ever cites. They also have a wildly speculative story about Tyler Robinson, which has been picked up by the New York Post, also a tabloid. Rolling Stone reached out to the band and were informed this is categorically false, and it is not in the realm of true. It has been a consistent answer, in fact, since Christine McVie died in 2022. In a 2024 interview also with Rolling Stone, Stevie Nicks said, and I quote, "There is no more Fleetwood Mac now, because when Christine died, Fleetwood Mac died. We cannot replace her." On September 17th, Trump posted to Truth Social that he designated the concept of being anti-fascist a major terrorist organization. Yes, he did post this. No, that's not a thing. The US government has one legal terrorist designation, FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations. They have separate other weird ones for state-backed terrorism. The FBI is responsible for handling domestic terrorism. However, it maintains no necessarily public list and has been cutting domestic anti-terrorism budgets for years, and in fact largely ceased domestic anti-terrorism work, having largely been seconded to ICE. The Bureau now has the additional struggle of trying to maintain day-to-day DEEA operations after being illegally gutted by its director, Kash Patel, most famous for his failed podcast career, and a 3-day public tantrum in front of Congress last week. Even barring all those issues, the FBI has been historically reticent to investigate domestic terror orgs, as they're overwhelmingly white supremacists, Christian apocalyptic accelerationists, or anti-abortion orgs. They also keep running into the issue where investigating any such orgs inevitably reveals that the membership are predominantly members of local police, sheriff's departments, and/or FBI field offices. You may have also heard Trump is seeking to label trans people terrorists. Before I explain further, I'm not saying the situation isn't dangerous and dire, but we need to be clear about what is happening, not the thing 2 steps down the road we can all see coming. On Thursday, September 18th, the day after that stupid Truth Social post, Alejandra Caraballo and Ken Klippenstein both posted leaked documents they purported said as such. Alejandra's documents came from the Heritage Foundation, a far-right, non-government hate group who authored Project 2025. The documents spout irrational claims with no basis in reality, while making up wild demands of the FBI, and again, they're leaked from a hate group whose goal is to scare trans people into detransitioning or self-deleting. Caraballo did their work for them, going so far as to proudly announce she was blocking anyone who called her out for her fear-mongering. Ken's article cited actual internal FBI documents, but again, catastrophized them. And you have to assume that they're leaked documents. They must be taken with a grain of salt. He phrased it as if the FBI are going to label all trans people as terrorists, rather than the reality that this will force trans people already accused of a crime under harsher scrutiny and treatment more comparable to the ways that Black and Hispanic folks have been assigned entirely falsified gang ties after arrests. It puts every trans person in more danger at protests, in our every interaction with the police, but they don't do what either journalist claims. Personally, I recommend against Caraballo's work categorically, as she is an advocate of generative AI, and like Aaron Reed of Aaron in the Morning, her objective is not to inform trans people, but to scare us, because that's how they both pull in monetary support. Sidebar, but I also recommend only cis folk read Aaron Reed, as they need to understand our fear, but trans folks need to not have their own personal danger falsely inflamed by her inflammatory and often stolen reporting. Ken, personally, I've never followed his reporting. I check his articles to see the sources and draw my own conclusions. Similarly, this CNN article from Thursday, September the 18th, was also getting shared around a lot because of its explosive title. This is not exactly what the decision was. The MMRV vaccine, the combined measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella, the virus that causes chickenpox and shingles, vaccine is no longer being recommended for children under 4, allegedly due to potential links to febrile seizures. The vaccine board is instead recommending MMR and varicella in separate shots. The real evil is that the board carved out an exception where they do recommend the MMRV to those on the Vaccines for Children program, a federal initiative which provides free vaccines to low-income children. Let me stress, the Centers for Disease Control's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, after being gutted by Brainworm Bobby Jr. and replaced with a pack of vaccine skeptics, carved out an exception to specifically provide a vaccine they believe to be dangerous only to impoverished children. Additionally, the committee delayed its expected vote on the COVID and hepatitis B vaccine recommendation changes, both of which have proven safe in myriad clinical trials. The COVID vote on Friday about requiring a prescription to get the life-saving vaccine resulted in a tie broken by the ACIP chair Martin Kulderoff, begrudgingly voting no. The Hep B vote, also about restricting access to the life-saving vaccine, was punted into the indefinite future. So yes, even Brainworm Bobby and his pro-disease CDC can in fact be bullied. Hail, this next one, it's fucked up. And I'm not even going to justify the false pretense and perspective cops have been putting forward by acting like it's even remotely possible. Simply put, no Black man in the United States has ever hung himself from a tree, much less one at the center of his college. And the Bolivar County Sheriff's Office did not investigate Demartrevion Trey Reed's death. For the rest of you who are unaware of this to begin with, on September 15th, the body of a young black man, later identified as Reed, was found hanging from a tree at the center of the Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi. The university lied to his family, claiming he'd been found dead in his dorm, only for them to see videos of his body on social media. The local sheriff's office declared they found no signs of foul play, despite the fact that no black man would invoke lynchings in his own suicide being a sign in and of itself. The local coroner's office spat out a report the same day to the same effect, again, despite a complete lack of motivation for suicide, and many friends citing future plans they'd made, a rarity for suicide victims. Colin Kaepernick has already pledged to pay for a proper autopsy, while civil rights lawyer Ben Crump is representing the family and leading the charge for a proper investigation. Look, the next story also sucks, so let me break it up the awful with a non sequitur. Who does this megastone belong to? Well, according to YouTuber Austin John Plays' 17-minute video from September 19th, Sylveon, obviously, except it's a fan edit made by Nora in the future, a Pokemon streamer, shiny hunter, and organizer for PKM Pride. The confusion seems to come from the fact that she posted this skeet and tweet with the joke, wait, what's this megastone for? And since everyone knows women, and especially trans women, can't make jokes, Austin John assumed it was real, even after Nora and others told him on BlueSky and YouTube. Okay, back to the more serious stuff. Hey, Trump did not back down on Chicago. No, he never sent troops in, though on Sunday the 21st, he did illegally federalize more National Guard to invade Memphis. Don't forget about that threat, because he's fallen through on it too. Instead, ICE has been terrorizing the Illinois capital, kidnapping folks off the streets, murdering Silverio Villegas Gonzalez last week as part of a jump out, and facing building protests at their Broadview detention center after claiming to have kidnapped 550 people in the last 2 weeks. Less like the DC and LA invasions, where local politicians revealed their true colors, celebrating the crackdowns or decrying them before implementing their own versions, respectively. The Chicago boondoggle has been more like New York, with local alderpersons, senators, religious leaders, and at least one candidate taking time out of campaigning to protest the facility. I am, of course, speaking of Kat Abu Ghazali, whom ICE agents seem to have a thing for violently throwing to the ground. She pointed out to the Huffington Post, this facility is committing crimes against humanity. It is a processing facility, so people are not supposed to be held for more than 12 hours at a time and are being held for days or weeks at a time. It is horrific. The protests around the detention facility have been building since early Friday morning, with ICE agents filling the street with tear gas, a chemical weapon both illegal to use against enemy combatants under the Geneva Conventions, and a known abortifacient, and one going so far as to repeatedly draw his pistol. Protesters have been taken by agents, grabbed and dragged into the facility as vehicles would try to race out the front gate into the crowd. Some, though not all, have been released. The Trump administration was also dealt a blow earlier this week after filing a spurious lawsuit against the New York Times for... Actually, that's kind of the issue. It's unclear what harm Trump even felt they'd done to him, much less what would be worth the $15 billion he was demanding in compensation. Not million like he asked for from ABC. I said billion. The lawsuit's already been rejected. For one, it's rather hard to accuse a paper of libeling you when it's actively been performing hagiography for you and Charlie Kirk. But this is almost impressive how bonkers it is. The judge, Stephen Douglas Merriday, an appointee of the Elder Bush, rejected the case under Rule 8 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, which requires a complaint include a short and plain statement of the claim showing that the pleader is entitled to relief. Trump's complaint was 85 pages long. Judge Merriday gave the administration 28 days to refile the complaint, no longer than 40 pages. And I'll be honest, Merriday's 4-page response is so absurd, I'll probably read it out entirely during the post-show. In other news, Canada, France, Australia, the UK, and Portugal all officially recognized the state of Palestine this week. In slightly less positive news, at the 10,000th meeting of the UN on September 18th, the 15 Security Council members voted to enforce an actual ceasefire on the genocidal state of Israel, or it would have, since the vote was 14-1, but that one was the US, who along with China, France, Russia, and the UK hold the 5 permanent seats on the UN Security Council. The other 10 rotate in elections among the 193 member states every 2 years. Each of those permanent seats comes with a complete veto power over any resolution. While the USian dictatorship has been cracking down on minorities at home, it's also been murdering foreign nationals as well. 2 Mondays ago, I reported on the extrajudicial murder of what were most likely asylum seekers from Venezuela, but which J.D. Vance and Trump claimed to be drug smugglers, as well as the follow-up from Vance seeming to admit to the war crime? Well, that happened 2 weeks ago, and again last week, and the week after that, and another one yesterday after I wrote this script. But also this last week, there was an extra strange twist. On September 17th, the Venezuelan Minister of the Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, announced they'd captured what they claim is a DEA false flag operation used to justify the U.S. military forces in the Caribbean. Venezuelan authorities claim to have caught a speedboat carrying nearly 37 kilograms of cocaine and 2,400 liters of fuel, as well as 5 men, one with alleged ties to the DEA. All men reportedly presented Venezuelan IDs. According to Cabello, 4 of the 5 confessed to working for the DEA, and that the intent was to be arrested by the DEA forces once they'd reached the US as a pretense. Actually, while I'm talking about drugs, did you know that most illicit fentanyl is produced in Mexico? Well, this stuff not sold by legitimate doctors and vets to less legitimate sources, but that's neither here nor there. Also, that despite the Trump administration's claims, most cocaine shipments coming into the US actually travel via the Pacific, not the Atlantic. Oh, and a final bit of fun on this. Because of Trump's illegal deportation obsession and ideological purges of the enforcement agencies, Maine cocaine and fentanyl smuggling corridors from Mexico into Arizona are currently almost entirely unstaffed. So much cocaine is getting into the US in the last 9 months that the price has plummeted, reportedly by as much as 50%. Turns out, Trump is making at least one thing cheaper after all. First up, last week was the 50th anniversary of Te Wiki o Te Reo Maori, aka Maori Language Week in Aotearoa. I also love that just happens to line up with Bi-Visibility Week in the US. Te Reo Maori has been one of Aotearoa's official languages since 1987, but with this week, at least a few ministers took it even further than usual, using Te Reo Maori exclusively on the parliamentary floor, as well as in press interviews this past week. While many ministers and press speak Te Reo Maori, the Parliament has had a permanent translation team since 1997, and even simultaneous interpretation via earbuds since 2010 for those who need it. I also feel the commitment to decolonization in Aotearoa is a beacon the rest of us can learn from, and I just kind of wanted to share. This next story is near and dear to my goofus heart. A new, well, actually really, really old, Pachycephalosaur has been discovered. The Zacacephale Rinpoche, I assure you I probably screwed that one up, is the earliest known dome-headed dinosaur yet discovered at around 108 million years old. Pachyes were a class of bipedal herbivores with the classic dome heads that roamed what is now North America and Asia during the Cretaceous period, about 143 million to 66 million years ago, though most of the better-known species were from the latter periods. The Pachycephalosaurus, from which the rest of the species group draw their name, was one of those later evolutions, believed to be social grazers. The fossil records show that they could grow to be 15 feet long and weigh 600 pounds as they tromped across what is now Wyoming 70 million years ago. The Zacacephale, 38 million years earlier, was the size of a large turkey, growing to 3 feet long and an expected weight of only 20 pounds. The early Mongolian cousins are providing paleontologists with fascinating insights to how the species had evolved, I guess. The skeleton alone has already disproven previous theories that the earlier Pachyes were flat-footed a la the Protoceratops, a popular theory as the myriad Ceratopsia also evolved during the Cretaceous. And finally, my investigative reporting. I suspect many of you have seen this tweet. Now deleted by Sherman Wu, head of engineering at Sam Altman's OpenAI, aka folks who run ChatGPT, aka the chatbot, responsible for at least one murder-suicide. I can't say Sherwin is lying in the tweet. I wasn't at the OpenAI Korea launch event, but Vince, a producer for the Black Label, who's credited on the songs Idol and Soda Pop from K-pop Demon Hunters, was. Yes, that is him on stage. So, sorry. Yeah, Vince is here for AI slop. That part isn't up for debate. In fact, he was directly quoted on the Korean article saying, "When producing K-pop, we sometimes use ChatGPT to think of inspiration," and also noted that AI technology had already been being used for K-pop. When I started looking into this, I found it's been being used for K-pop since 2021. It's not new, y'all. However, Sherwin doesn't seem to have been telling the whole truth. He was almost quoting, from a Korean Hwang Daily article without admitting as such, but whatever. Trick is, the almost quote was from their English site, which before September 17th used to include this section attributing Soda Pop to ChatGPT, while linking to an English site-only article where, paradoxically, Vince talked about writing a guitar demo 7 years ago, then sitting on it and handing it to another composer 24 after Sony kept asking for bubblier songs for K-pop Demon Hunters. But that section is not in the Korean article. In fact, I double-checked with a friend in Korea to make sure, not trusting Google Translate, and the song Soda Pop was not mentioned in the article at all, nor was that entire section with the second linked article present. The rub arrives with this little bit at the end of the English article. This article was originally written in Korean and translated by a bilingual reporter with the help of generative AI tools. It was then edited by a native English-speaking editor. All AI-assisted translations are reviewed and refined by our newsroom. So either their AI translator added an entire section while changing very little else, while adding a link to an article that says the opposite, or somewhere in that reviewing and refining process, the entire newsroom and a dedicated editor missed an additional hyperlink, or a section was added by a human, which technically libeled Vince, despite him already being pro-AI, in order to tie ChatGPT to K-pop Demon Hunters. The English article was updated on the 17th, strangely with a correction note at the bottom. This section is also still different. It still links to the English-only article, and it stripped out a direct quote from Vince that was in the Korean article, which he did say about using ChatGPT to inspire his music, which, again, my friend specifically pointed out as a word that has some amount of interpretation open to it. Oh, and let me not forget that RM of BTS was also there and celebrated his birthday with the OpenAI Korean executives, just in case you thought it was just Vince. No, K-pop Demon Hunters was not made with ChatGPT. However, it very clearly was used in some way around it, because all of the people involved with making it are very free with their love of generative AI. Anyway, thank you all so very much for joining me. I hope that was an experience, because it was for me. I have therapy in like 45 minutes, so let's see if we can do this quick. These will continue to happen on Mondays at 8 a.m. I hope that I will one day be able to actually have my visuals done ahead of time. It would be easier if I didn't keep having to rewrite my stories on Sunday, but hey. On tonight, we are doing the Antifa movies, which is to say the vote is up for Blazing Saddles, Starship Troopers, and I can even read it right there, but I can't. Oh, The Great Dictator, the Charlie Chaplin movie, which if it doesn't win, I'm making everyone watch it as a second movie. Too bad. On the 24th at 9 a.m., I will be playing Silk Song. Oh, by the way, hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see all of this live, and if you want to yell at me about my reporting, coverage, whatever, please feel free to come do so at twitch.tv/fenoflore. Yeah, Silk Song on Wednesday at 9 a.m., I will hopefully be doing Elite Dangerous on Thursday at 9 a.m. I was supposed to do that last week too, but then I had to go to the emergency vet, so yay. On Friday the 26th, I will be playing Hades 2 at 4 p.m. and harping endlessly on about unions, because in case you're not aware, Supergiant Games refused to shift their development towards, refused to sign the temporary union contract from SAG-AFTRA, which is why Marin Miller is no longer... Miller? I feel like I always get their name wrong. Is no longer the voice of Athena, despite also having been the voice of Athena in Hades 1. Let's see. Oh, right. Girlfriend Tarkov, where I'll be playing more Tarkov with PvE casual-ish Tarkov with April on Saturday at 4 p.m. And I wanted to try No Man's Sky since I was trying to do Skin Deep, and I got so angry at it because I couldn't get its audio to play until I finally figured out what the issue was, that by the time I'd figured out the issue, it was just like, I'm too angry to deal with this now, so I'm doing a different game. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm gonna see about doing a little bit of a post show here because I do want to read through Judge Mary Day's fucking ridiculous comments. It's only 4 pages. It's only 4 pages and it's so ridiculous. Okay, yeah, let's go do that. For those of you who are watching on the VOD, I will cut over, or the VOD on YouTube, I'll cut over to the sign out here. Thank you all so very much for joining me. I hope you've all had fun. That was news. Thank you very much to April, Fragile Paper, Manfred, Pinball Witch, Pimento, Yalk, and Rose. I literally could not do this without all of y'all. If you could do me a favor, I'm going to throw you to... I'm going to throw you to Tovi. Jules, if you can explain that I won't be able to respond or say anything. Yeah, I hope everyone has a good day, night, time zone, whatever's for you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye!